God and Other Delicacies has a weekly newsletter. If you'd like to subscribe, email me at godsdelicateshow@gmail.com and I'll put you on the list. Hello, everyone. Welcome to God and Other Delicacies. I'm Nicholas D'Augusto. Thank you all for being here. Today, I have the privilege of welcoming Julia Cunningham to the show. Julia is a SiriusXM radio host and DJ. She currently sits as the morning DJ for SiriusXMU, their indie rock music channel. However, her big new assignment is co-hosting the Jess Cagle Show, a daily news and entertainment interview show highlighted by the many A-list stars and bright artists always floating through their studio. I met Julia when I sat in for a couple of different interviews while promoting Trial and Error on her previous radio show, LA Daily. We hit it off well enough that she told me to get a hold of her whenever I had something going on. Little did she know I was going to turn the tables on her and get her in as a guest on my show to talk about God for an hour. She's a Gracie Award winner, and I'm grateful that she's here. Welcome to the show, Julia.
Oh my God, I'm so honored.
Ooh.
I never get to be the guest. I'm like, what do I do?
I saw, as I was doing some research on your stuff, like bio stuff, I saw that you've done a couple of podcasts, right? Have you hopped on some other people's podcasts?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're doing it every day of your life, so there's no way you could possibly feel as comfortable in the guest chair, but you're so comfortable in front of a mic.
What you don't know is I'm going to take over at like the 30-minute mark, and then it's just going to be about you the rest of the time.
I honestly thought about writing a joke in at my introduction that was going to be like, I'm ready.
I can't help it.
She's going to turn on me.
It's like by the end, I realize I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Did I take over that? Sorry.
Yeah, I totally get it. We'll get into a lot of the stuff about like how you discovered this talent in yourself.
Sure.
You know, that'll kind of come out, I imagine. How did the transition from your successful LA Daily show turn into co-hosting the Jess Cagle Show? Like, what's going on right now, and why did you decide to move? Or obviously, it's a great opportunity to be with Jess Cagle, so maybe you just saw it as a really cool opportunity.
Like larger picture, sure. I mean, one thing that we had to wrestle with is that where LA Daily lived, and prior to LA Daily, I was on a show called News and Notes, all within the umbrella of a partnership between SiriusXM and Entertainment Weekly.
Right.
And that was the birth of one of my mentors, this woman, Sandy Gerard, from the SiriusXM side, and Henry Goldblatt and Jess Cagle, who Jess was the editorial director of People and Entertainment Weekly, and Henry was the editor-in-chief of EW. And when they launched this channel, I was still just working at SiriusXM. I was the morning DJ on SiriusXMU, and I was being pushed more in what I would say a managerial route, working in the music department. Oh. And I just thought, I don't like spreadsheets. We had to go to this morning meeting at 9 a.m. every morning, and I was like, I hate this. Oh, and wow. I love the creative stuff. And I had studied in college film, and I was always a pop culture buff, and it was something in the back of my mind. I just didn't know how to tap into it.
Yeah.
And when Entertainment Weekly Radio was launching, I genuinely just submitted my resume through the company website. I didn't really know people on the talk side, and I did a series of demos and ended up really like risking kind of where I felt, oh, if I don't get this, I feel like I have to leave the company, because the department wasn't, quote, thrilled that I was trying to leave and go to another department.
Wow.
And I luckily took over as the co-host of this woman, Faith Saley, who is part of NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, and on CBS
cool.
Sunday Morning, and this incredible host. And that's sort of how I started out. So I've had this close relationship with the EW family, although I never actually have been an Entertainment Weekly employee. I've always been a SiriusXM employee, and that's how I really got to know Henry, and specifically Jess. We ended up getting to really bond over Comic-Con and all these other things. So we found out around Christmas of last year, and this was not unusual, that, hey, like, the contract is coming up. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, because now it's no longer just a Time Inc. brand. It's a Meredith company, and we're not sure what's going to happen. And so they did maintain a portion of the relationship between the two. Dalton Jessica, who hosts a show called EW Live, still is branded to Entertainment Weekly, and there's a lot of on-demand content. But the rest of the channel really went away, and it just happened to be at the time Jess Cagle was leaving People Magazine and Entertainment Weekly and looking, I think, for his next step of his career. And luckily, he thought of me and we were able to work together. And I was so thankful, not only for him, but just for the friendship that we've, sort of gained over the last few years because of Entertainment Weekly, and us getting to work together has been really great.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And it's he brings an enormous wealth of connections.
Oh my God.
I mean, I was looking through what that guy's done. I I kind of know a name here and there, and
right.
I've never really been at the level where I was coming in to talk to Jess Cagle, but like, I was just like, wow, this guy. I mean, and obviously he brought in Julia Roberts for his first, which is fireworks for that.
He has quite the Rolodex. But I will also say, like, from jumping right into working with someone like Faith, and then I had this incredible co-host, this guy named Mario, who I love dearly and is actually a screenwriter now here in Los Angeles. I learned a lot just sort of on the job of it, but I've really learned in these last few months working with Jess, like what it takes to really produce and to have the editorial mind of it, and like what's important. And it's not about you, it's about the larger picture. And I've learned more sort of in my time just working directly with him than the time I'd been doing just flailing around in deep waters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's been
that's
very
great. You're
rewarding.
probably underselling yourself a little bit.
Oh my God.
But no, that's great. I mean, I can only imagine when you're around somebody that's been doing it at so many levels. I mean, somebody that's been he was the executive director, or no?
Yeah, he was the editorial director.
That's right. So he's very high level positions on both the print, and he was essentially the spearheading of championing the kind of multimedia platform rise of these things. So very cool, and congrats to you. I do have one tiny question. So your show, News and Notes, is the show with which you won the Gracie Award for, right?
Yeah.
And so you must have been just getting started. This little story you told about how you're not sure if you would have gotten the job and you would have had to leave Sirius
totally
turned into News and Notes almost directly, almost
pretty
immediately.
much,
and then you got an award.
Right, yeah. Within our first year, one thing that
that's some wonderful feedback.
Totally. And I have my Gracie Award
in
my apartment here in Los Angeles. And it was one of those things where I guess you sort of learn more with getting the confidence of it. The thing that I won for is that I actually did a huge deep dive into the world and life of Nile Rodgers, because this is a musical figure that has been sort of behind the scenes for a lot of his career. He was in that band Chic, that was the disco era, but he produced David Bowie and Madonna's Like a Virgin, and is this epic huge producer, but was not as well known, but sort of had a resurgence when he appeared on that song Get Lucky with Daft Punk, which was the hugest song at the time. And I started realizing, oh wow, a lot of people don't really know who that man in the dreads who's playing the guitar on stage with that band, who that is. So I did a deep dive into his whole life and career up to that point, and that's what I won a Gracie Award for. I know.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I loved it.
That's great. Well, it's look, you were credited by seeing the hidden gem.
Totally.
And so that's great. Well, congrats. Let's talk about God now. But first we talk about breakfast.
Yeah.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I have to say, because I am clearing out our refrigerator because newlywed and my husband and I are heading out.
You just got married?
Yes, I got married 2 months ago.
I didn't know that.
Yes, just got married. Newlywed.
Congrats.
Thank you.
That's so great.
Yes, and so we decided to do our honeymoon over the Christmas New Year break because you get so much time, and no one even knows. You don't have to really worry about work coverage, whatever else.
Well, and then your show was just launching.
Our show was just launching.
Really
I felt
weird,
like,
I'm sure.
man, but everyone kind of shuts down around the holidays.
Yeah.
So we're actually leaving tonight for our honeymoon. We're going to Australia.
Oh my gosh. I got you in just under the wire.
Yes, totally. And so I had to clear out my fridge. So I ate a piece of pizza.
Sure.
I had some leftover salami that was just leftover from, we had a cheese plate earlier this week, and 7 Christmas cookies.
What was the slice of pizza topping? You didn't want to put the salami on the pizza?
You know what? It was afterwards when I was like, oh, I need to just throw out whatever else we have. What is this, milk? I was like, oh my God, I just have a Ziploc bag of meat. I was like, this is disgusting. But then I was like, I'm still hungry.
Well, fantastic. There's no better way to get ready for a honeymoon than to really
clear the fridge.
Yeah, and then also just get a lot of vitamins and minerals and proper eating for the long trip.
Exactly.
Well, you'll be in Australia though. You're doing it right in that you're not taking your honeymoon trip as like it's time to go to, Nepal or something.
Right.
Like make it easy on yourself. You're in a beautiful, easy place. Are you going to stay? Are you going to do a lot of like movement in Australia? Or are you going to kind of hang in a couple of small areas and make it low key?
We're bopping around a little bit. We're starting in the northern part because we figured always on a trip, start with beach, end with beach. So we're starting to lay around for a couple of days. And then we're like going into Sydney. And then we're popping over just to Auckland for like 2 days on our way to Tahiti to do another just like 4 days of beach and then fly home. And that's like the halfway point on the way. So we're trying to like make our way back full circle.
Okay, so just real quick, your wedding was 2 months ago. So was it a big wedding? Was it a heavy involvement wedding? Was it a location wedding?
We did it here in Los Angeles, actually in Malibu. We basically rented this woman's estate, and our families got to stay with us in the house on the property. And we got married on the grounds there in sort of like the wine country of Malibu. And there was maybe like 120 people, I think. Yeah.
People flying in from other places?
Yeah, a lot of East Coasters.
Originally?
I'm from Indiana originally.
Okay.
And so my family came into town, his family from sort of like the Jersey, Pennsylvania area.
Cool.
And a lot of our East Coast friends, we both had lived in New York, but a lot of California people as well. Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So, the question that always kicks the show off is how and when were you introduced to the idea of God in your life? And although I do want you to go there, one quick question I have that could kind of angle me towards it is, did you have any religious representation at your wedding?
Well, so actually, and we'll probably dig in on this.
Yeah. Happy. I just kind of wanted, while we were still on the marriage thing, I wanted to just kind of ask.
My husband, who is not a churchgoer in any ways, there was never a discussion, or on both sides we knew that we weren't going to do a church wedding, but I did wanted representation there. My father is a theologian, and
you had mentioned this to me. I can't wait to hear about this.
And I had called my dad to let him know that Steve and I, my husband, that we were living in sin prior to the wedding. Totally had to call him and tell him that we were moving in together.
Oh, sure.
But I didn't even think about telling him that we weren't going to have a church wedding, because I think he ultimately knew that. But we wanted that represented with him being part of the wedding, and so he did a reading. He did a Bible reading during our ceremony, which we just had a friend officiate.
Okay, that's beautiful. So, we had a similar thing. We had a friend, the friend who introduced us actually, officiated the wedding. Yeah, blind date. We were a blind date.
Oh, I love that.
So, how and when were you introduced to the idea of God? How did it happen?
I mean, my parents are religious. I come from a family, obviously, of that, because my father is a theologian. Like it was. So I don't have specific early memories of, but I have a story, I guess, where when we were really young, it was always Sunday church. And as we got a little bit older, it started becoming our tradition of going to the 5:00 mass on Saturdays and then doing family dinner afterwards. But my parents always tell this story where I refused to go to Easter Mass one time when I was like, a little bit older than a toddler. I was probably like 5, something like that. And my parents were like, you need to get dressed and we need to go to church. And I said to my dad, well, you're going to be disappointed when you get there because God's not even there. And my parents were like, oh my God, that's so that's so intense. And also like, wow. Her understanding, like she kind of got that, And so I have like a memory of just my parents relaying that story to me. But I guess it was just something it was always part of our family.
Okay, a couple of basic questions.
Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have an older sister.
Okay, an older sister. And then also, were the services Catholic?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, it's funny that you say that because we would always go to Catholic Mass, especially once we got older. But we also went to a Greek church growing up.
Oh, Greek Orthodox.
Yeah, a Greek Orthodox church. But it was actually not fully Greek Orthodox because it was like a Greek Christian church. But it wasn't fully Catholic or anything like that, but Eucharist, everything that was done there.
Right. Well, that's actually, I have a conversation with a friend of mine, Nicholas Massou. His family is Syrian, and he was raised in the Antiochian Christian Orthodox Church, which is basically Greek Orthodox, which is basically there's an enormous amount of similarity. And he educated me even more so about how much similarity there is between the Catholic and the Orthodox. So Anyway, I can imagine that you had a similar. It didn't feel all that strange to you to go to that church.
I think it was actually more fun for us as kids because my family, my mom is an artist, and I feel like one thing that my parents really loved about it is that there's beautiful artwork. And it's mainly chanting versus like real forward singing.
Okay.
And I remember my mom always being like, "Oh God, they've brought out the hand bells or like the acoustic guitar for like, traditional Catholic church, whereas this was incense and artwork and chanting and outfits, and it was like so much more fun, kind of,
Cool.
Yeah.
So those years were what years of your childhood?
Most of my childhood, I would say pretty much like 5 on until probably like mid high school when we were going to Catholic high school and we started like going to a regular. So we went to, I shouldn't say like a regular Catholic church, but we went to the University of Notre Dame, who has like a massive basilica, and we started going there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I went to Jesuit upbringing myself. I went to basically Catholic education my entire life. I went to co-ed Catholic education, then high school was all male, and then college was also Jesuit, Marquette University in Milwaukee.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Did you go to a religiously affiliated university?
Yes. Well, I went through high school, and then I went to Notre Dame.
Oh, you straight up went to Notre Dame?
Straight up to Notre Dame.
Yeah,
yeah.
right on. So your parents were devout, though, or are devout.
Yeah.
And remain so.
For sure. Yeah. They still go to church every weekend. My parents are both tour guides at the Basilica in Notre Dame. But they know I don't go to church now.
Does he teach at Notre Dame?
He did. He's retired now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, taught and ran the theology department for years.
Wow, that's a big job.
Yeah, he did it.
He really did it. So did he participate? Does he participate in like national conferences of bishops or things like that? Is he one of these guys that would like help push modern theological thought?
I don't know if he modern, but he definitely, some of his specialties were Thomas Merton specifically and saints, and he would go give talks and lectures for sure and travel. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Okay, so we're near the first break. Let's just like stop here, and then we'll dive a little bit more into like your upbringing with it, and as you sort of began to, you clearly started as a 5-year-old. You were coming hot out of the gate, and let's see where it kind of goes from there after the break.
Perfect.
All right, everyone, we're back with Julia. So at 5, you articulate this antagonist is too strong, but it's a confrontational energy about what you're doing. And you're not at 5, it's not a high level thought, but you're not necessarily entirely on board with this.
Yeah, I was like, something's not right.
How did that start to come about? Like, you were Catholic, so you went through confirmation at some point, right? I went through confirmation. You're going to Notre Dame. Did you go to an all-girls version, a high school version of Notre Dame?
No. It was mixed.
Is Notre Dame is co-ed?
Yep.
Oh, it's not Jesuit.
Yeah,
so.
I went to it's St. Joe High School.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you play this game with yourself as you're kind of navigating through at what point do you start to have more adult thoughts about how you feel about this? And how does that manifest in your relationship with your parents? Do you kind of hide it? Do you just sort of keep these thoughts to yourself for a long time? Do you have an active sort of confrontation to some extent at any point in those years? One of the things you reference is that you obviously felt some sense of burden when you called your parents to be like, we're living in sin.
Yeah.
Now, clearly you're an adult, right? Like I don't know how old you are.
Which,
but
by the way, they didn't even care.
Yeah, right. By this time,
the pressure on me, yeah.
Yeah, but there's still that feeling of like you don't want to. You love your parents clearly.
Yeah, it's like my parents.
You don't want to disappoint. So yeah, can you speak to like sort of where that arc, how it sort of continued from a vocal 5
from 5
to,
on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one lovely thing about my parents, considering my father was seen as a known figure in that world, and he is a noted scholar, and he's brought into other universities and travels the world. They really, outside of us going to church, and it was always understood, even if I went back home to visit or stay post-college, whatever, we go to church on Saturdays or we do this or that. But it was never it was never pushed on us, and it never felt like it was something I had to rebel against, which I think makes it better because I grew up with a lot of, very Catholic families that had to do the rosary at night or whatever else, and
they're doing the rosary every night, huh?
And that kind of stuff, which is like can be really intense, especially for young people who are still figuring out who they are, what this is, or whatever. And I'm very drawn, I think, to the world of theology and religion. And I think there's a lot of things that I disagree with, internally of teaching with the LGBTQ community and, other things like that. But I do get as I get older, and now that I'm married and I have a husband who's also not a churchgoer, but I've said to him, like, if we have kids, they're being baptized.
Oh, wow.
And
interesting.
Those sort of things are important to me. Also, I think for the legacy of my family, like I want my kids to know that this was something really important to this side of your family. Even though I'm not really a churchgoer at this point in my life, there is something in the back of my head that is like, but I believe and I do meditation or prayer or whatever else when I do, but it's not in the forefront of my life, I guess, but I've never left it.
Interesting. So
yeah.
Meditation and prayer, do you think you still embody the same spiritual kind of teachings to some extent as sort of Christian centric? Do you think when you meditate, do you think there's, this is what I love about this show, right? Like you open up this book and the spectrum of the way we all try to navigate these very difficult feelings and thoughts. To me, it's fun to see how one connects to another. Clearly you're talking about like, well, you've left maybe Christian dogmatic teaching to some extent. You're referencing some thoughts about, secular rights and ethics versus what is considered moral in certain Catholic teachings or whatever. But when you say meditate, do you think is it Christian to some extent?
I'm sure it is, because I think there's a lot of growing up when it comes to prayer and meditation. You use prayer when you're like, I promise if I get this, God, I promise I won't do this anymore. Or please just, it's like you're jumping forward when you think you really need it. And as I got older, it was sort of, as cheesy as it sounds, like the everyday things in your life that are really great to be thankful for and to realize that there's some sort of higher being helping you, guiding you in a way became much more of my thing. And once I started doing actually yoga, really, cool. My favorite part was the meditation part at the end, or certain sort of styles of yoga that you go to. I always found that the most calming, and I think my mind would wander the same way my mind started to wander when I would start thinking about the larger picture of being thankful for things, was the way that my mind would go when I was meditating. So I think there is something about that has pulled me there. I also think, like, my dad meditates every day as well, and the man that he really studied and really knows his work is Thomas Merton, who really pushed that you should study other religions and find your path to your own religion. And I guess this is
right.
Just
he's a very inspirational Christian figure in
Christian
particular,
figure.
But just a spiritual leader, and
absolutely. And those sort of things, I think, as I get older, have made me realize what I'm doing. Like, oh, am I? Like, would I have thought a decade ago, if I had kids, to baptize them? No, but now as an adult, as I've gone through these different phases, I'm like, oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, that's really... And what does your husband say?
He's like, because to him, it sort of doesn't mean anything. So he's like, fine, yes, if you need to put water on a baby. And I'm like, ugh.
Well,
it's
what was
more than that. But he totally understands, and he's very respectful to it also.
What was his upbringing? Did he have a religious upbringing?
He didn't really have a religious upbringing, and I think he's to the place where, I don't want to speak for him in the sense of being
right,
like he doesn't believe or whatever,
sure.
And what his journey was. But I don't think he was ever, he didn't go to Catholic school. It wasn't really instilled in him. And he has close friends that I had asked him one point when we were dating, I was like, oh, I'm surprised you're not the godfather of their kids. And he's like, well, because a godparent is someone that's supposed to also guide them in faith. And they know I'm not that person.
Yeah.
So he's well aware sort of that placement and like what those words, godfather, godmother, mean.
Yeah. didn't baptize my son. And in my family, I'm the middle of 5 children, and my oldest brother has 2 children, and his wife was raised Lutheran, and so they have raised their children in a Lutheran church. My brother Andy is the second eldest, and he has six children, and which is like how he topped my 5 children nuclear family. Is insane. I mean, they're all wonderful, but it is total mayhem. They're a traveling circus.
Yeah,
it's really great. But
as a person who used to babysit Catholic families, yes,
yeah. Oh, they're amazing. But they're their own show. I asked a couple of my siblings to be godparents, and I feel like this is a word. So some part of what I like to, what I'm interested in, why this show is something I love, is that I think that when we can take some of these things that are meaningful, that not necessarily, I think some people would if you're Catholic, I can imagine that they would be like, no, you really shouldn't be a godparent if you're not Catholic or not religiously affiliated or whatever that is. I kind of disagree. I feel like there's something, you can be a guiding moral force for a child,
sure.
Whether or not, and I think it's fun. I think it's a beautiful term to say godparent or godfather. It has meaning to me. And so I did choose siblings to be godparents, even though he wasn't baptized. And so it's sort of piecemeal, right? We're like, I'm sewing the tapestry together.
Yeah.
But I say that only because I think it's important to try to find the things that can be like, we can reclaim certain things if you don't feel you have a necessarily direct anchor in a deep religious connection to that specific religion. So something you're talking about, right? Like baptizing your child is a big deal.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. It's a big statement. You'll have to say things that are pretty big.
Yeah. And I'll have to go to church before. I can't just walk in and baptize the baby. We'll have to commit.
Right. You'll have to go through and sit with a priest, right?
Yeah.
For some time, don't you?
Yeah. And I think I have to also find the Church of West Hollywood or whatever.
But it's something that clearly has meaning to you. That the process isn't intimidating. It's actually something that sounds like you're kind of excited about.
Yeah,
to some extent. I mean, I don't want to align you with it.
And also, we don't have any children yet, you guys.
Yes,
so don't worry.
sorry. I mean, I don't want to put extra pressure on you.
Down the road.
Yes. But the idea being that you're open to the idea, and something about maybe even the marriage in particular inspired some of this, right? Like just the thought of coming together with someone. Has that?
Well, I think that is it's so funny because people keep asking us because we're only 2 months, almost 3 months, married, where they're like, how is it? Like, what's different? And I'm like, nothing. Like, it feels the same, but in a weird way, it's like, no, there are things that have changed. I can't put my finger on it.
Right. Well, you're in the beginning of articulating all of that.
Yeah.
And it's a big, beautiful journey. When you meet people when you're, I don't know how old you are. Again, I'm older than you, but when you're someone that's established in your life, you are clearly an established professional. I'm sure he is too. When you meet at that stage, it's not like it was for my parents when they met very, very young, and they didn't even really have legit job. Like they were just kind of scraping together whatever they could, and the careers happened in tandem with each other. Things like commingling finances and purchasing something someday. These types of things are all ahead of you.
Oh my gosh, it's so crazy because we're still at the thing where, like the idea of changing my name. Because even now,
this is a big deal for you because you have a public personality.
But also the concept of changing your name back in the day was because it's not like today where you have to get your whole life is your name. You know what I mean? Like every bank account, your social security, like all these things. And I'm like, it's not that I don't love you, but I just don't want to go through the hassle of having to change a million things.
My wife. I had no pressure in this whatsoever.
Yeah.
My wife decided at a certain point that she didn't want to take my name. And it was not easy for her. It was quite a hassle. And also she had already been established as a photographer by that point. And for a year or two, she had her old name linked to her new website name and all that kind of stuff. But it's a big decision, and it has to be something that obviously you're really into, but it sounds like there's a part of you that is kind of intrigued by the idea of taking his name.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something really nice and traditional about it. He also has a difficult Ukrainian last name.
Oh, okay, wild. All right, of course.
That also makes me nervous because everything that we were doing with the wedding they'd always be like, "What's that last name?" And then they'd be like, "You're not taking that, are you?" And I'd be like, "I know." And I was joking. I'd be like, "He's forcing me to." He's not in any way.
Yeah.
But I think there was something traditional about it. But also like professionally, I would keep my name because that's what people know me by.
Right.
So
This is a real...
We're undecided at this moment.
It's a debate, and you're at the beginning. But these are big things.
Yeah.
So, do you think that I don't want to? Having had a child, I am even more self-conscious about talking to people who haven't had children yet about it. So I would like to leave that as all we've said about it at this point. You have your own journey with that. And maybe
That'll
years...
be part 2 down the road.
And maybe years down the road after you have a child, we'll come back and you can talk about how you baptized him or her. Do you see a part of you, though, say you don't have a child for years, say 5 years or something, or never. Do you see a path forward where you might actually start going to religious services without it? You seem open to it enough right now. I wonder if something has clicked now.
Right.
In a very seed-oriented way, it sounds like. You're at the beginning of this journey. But it is a big adult step to marry. It's a big reality reorienting. And I wonder if something has happened on a larger scale for you in that way.
That's interesting. Honestly, I don't know if I would. I think the memory of it and the things that make me think, oh, maybe I would go to versus actually walking into a church and sitting in a pew and going through a mass, I think are not like what I'm looking for in life. Or I feel like it'll be, I don't want to say a letdown because that's not quite the right phrasing, but it'll be different than what I imagine it to be. I like the memories that I have of the Greek church that we would go to as a youth. And that was like really fun. And I liked all the people and there was a lot of children and it was really great. And I know that's not going to be captured in something for me as an adult. And I don't think I would seek it out if I didn't have something sort of pushing me to go there.
So something we have to get back to. I left it. We took a tangent, which was totally great. But I want to get back to childhood a little bit, or young adulthood. It sounds like you had a relatively positive experience with your religious upbringing for quite some time.
For sure, yeah.
But at a certain point, you must have made some sort of conscious decision to be like, I'm kind of putting this down.
Yeah, I think it was probably by time I got to high school where I was in a more traditional... I mean, it was pretty traditional, our high school, uniforms and going to religious services. And there was a really wonderful priest that worked there. His name is Father Mike. And I actually worked in a dining hall through my high school years that was this building at Notre Dame. It's called Corby Hall, and it's where the priests live.
Okay.
And so I worked in this dining hall where the priests lived, and I knew many of them because of my father and just having grown up sort of on campus and just knew many of them in that way.
Right. You were a kind of beloved family to them.
Totally. Yeah. And they were all, wonderful and they were great. And it was like a really fun experience having friends and just, we're just working, like one of my first jobs, and it was very easy, by the way. And it was fun. And being at Notre Dame, you're really surrounded by a really positive look at the Catholic faith in many ways. And having that experience was very positive. But then when I think you get sort of outside of the sheltered community that you live in and you see the flaws in the larger picture, I think that's hard to ignore. I think it's easier when you're young and you're swept up in something versus looking at a larger thing where it's like, but why is that? And why do they do that? And why was that covered up? And, those sort of larger things, I think, definitely took the shine off of what I saw growing up, for sure.
You continued on to Catholic University, though.
Yeah.
I mean, again, our upbringing is relatively similar. I mean, I continued into Marquette University, and I really enjoyed my Catholic upbringing for quite some time. And I was a very devout young child. And in college, I wavered between times where I was trying to get deeper into the faith because I could feel it slipping away to some extent. And then there were times where I was like, no, I've really got to start to shoot out a different way. Did you engage with this question for some time, or did you just kind of, once you got to college, did you start kind of putting it aside? Was it easy for you to put it aside, or was it something that you like maybe had some agony over at different times?
No, I think like once I got to college, it was so easy to put it aside because it's like the first time away from home, but still in the bubble. I mean, my parents live within walking distance of the university. I mean,
oh, wow.
You could walk home in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And even my high school, from chemistry, you could see the Golden Dome. The high schools are literally right across the street from the campus.
Right.
So it's just such a large part of my childhood.
It's a dominating
it's
architectural...
the big thing.
Right, and it's a beautiful, it's a gorgeous architectural piece.
If you've never been there in the fall, you've got to go.
Yeah, I bet.
You got to go. It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
And it was great, but I think once I got to college and I was able to do, quote, what I thought I wanted to do, do you know what I mean? Where you're just like, wow, I can stay up late and watch movies all the time and whatever else. And outside of having to do, I believe you have to do a certain amount of credits of theology or whatever, doing an intro class and something different and maybe a philosophy class or whatever. I didn't do much out besides that, and I didn't go to church once I got to college at all. Maybe every once in a while for something, but I will say I haven't in a long time, but I would always still go to the masses around Easter, because they're beautiful. I always liked
the most uplifting time of the year.
The most uplifting time of the year. I guess the goth in me, I always loved.
Were you a goth kid?
Not like a goth kid, but I've always liked, the darker stuff and the more morbid stories or whatever.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I loved the moment, and, churches do it differently. The almost 11 p.m. or midnight mass of when Christ is basically put on the cross, because it always was
right. This part not so uplifting,
but it was always scary to me as a kid, and it seemed thrilling in a way because you're in these huge churches and they turn out all the lights, and it depends on what type of church you're in. But at like the basilica, everyone bangs the pews to make the sound of the fighting.
Wow.
And it was always
I've
so
never
crazy.
been a part of something
and then,
like that.
oh my
That's
God, it would give me chills. And then it goes silent, and a single, like the priest walks back in with a candle lit, and it's the only light in the church. From this giant church, this one tiny candle that he's walking back up, and it was always like so theatrical and over the top, and I'd always be like, oh my God, are we going to go to that one where they bang the pews?
Yeah,
growing up, it was so exciting. And
cool.
Churches do it differently wherever you are, but I always thought it was very dramatic.
Yeah, that's
I loved
good.
it. So I would still go to that, even when I was in college. I'd always be like, oh, that one fun church night.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to get back into some more of the adult kind of like stage of your spiritual thought that kind of bridges where that story left off and where we've already been, which is marriage and Ukrainian last names.
Everywhere, Ukrainian last names.
All right, I'll talk to you in a little bit. Okay, we're back with our final segment with Julia. So one thing that struck me, and it's happened in a number of conversations, is you really responded in this visceral sense to the theatricality of it, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And so now here you are, right? You mentioned that you went to film school, right? You studied film?
Yeah,
not film school in particular.
Yeah.
You studied film at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I did like film theory.
And then you are in a world of performance. I mean, you're a performer and interviewer, but you're around performers. You're clearly interested in performers. Has that thrill been a source of a kind of, say, spiritual like feeling in your life? Because I have the impression that maybe once you left Notre Dame that you haven't really been in a church much since. Did you go try to, once you came out to LA, did you seek out?
I didn't, no.
Anything like that? And so you've been following what is clearly a resonant feeling, which is being in this world of performance, and there's a theatricality to your work, to the work of the people you're interviewing. Has that been a kind of sustaining feeling for you? Do you think that has at times, I mean, do you think your spiritual impulse has lied dormant for quite some time?
I mean, probably. I mean, that's a good way to put it. I would have to like sit back and think, because I think I also, if I, like, let's say if after this and you were like, by the way, actually, my wife and I go to this cool rock and roll church, I'd be like, ugh, sounds terrible. I'm not going to that. But part of me would be like, oh, I think I haven't found people because it is a community, in your faith and church that hasn't been around me. And I haven't met anyone that belongs to a church, even of their own faith. You know what I mean? Like I guess I have some friends that are Jewish that definitely go to temple and stuff like that, but I haven't met anyone that necessarily goes to church or that makes me confront it or think about it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised because here in LA, not to call you, but like here in LA, you would think that there is something very theatrical somewhere, But.
Oh, and I'm sure there are. I mean, I know there are. My parents, when they come out to visit, they go to a church where they are absolutely, one of their favorite things to do now when they visit, they always make sure they come out over the weekend because they love to go to this mass where it's very disparate ethnicities and an enormous, like I guess it is an extraordinary chorus. And so they really love it. We have occasionally gone to this Unitarian Universalist church in Pasadena called the Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church. And so they're not really any one religion. They're not, there's some, you get the sense that it's a lot of people who are raised with Christianity because just the kind of form of the service has a kind of hearkening to a kind of Catholic or Lutheran or Christian sort of ceremony, very progressive and in their ideas, and very, very vocally progressive in the way that their coloring of their iconography and stuff like that. It is not at all, there's no Bible there, there's no Christian thing going on there, but there's something reverent happening there, which is interesting. We don't go all the time, but it sounds like I'm catching you at an interesting moment in your arc.
Yeah.
That there's something that you just made a kind of beautiful pledge to someone, right?
Yeah.
And the act of the pledge inevitably gets you thinking about a lot of other things, right? What do I want the rest of my life to be? What do I want my family to be with this man or partner, whatever that is for whoever's listening. And it begins to open up thoughts that maybe you haven't, it doesn't sound like that you maybe were engaging too much with. It doesn't sound like you were struggling much with your father or mother.
No, not at all.
They weren't, berating you for, not going.
Yeah, they're well aware.
Yeah. You have a healthy, life with them. When you went back to visit, would you go to mass with them?
Yeah, I think pretty much. I mean, they have...
Just almost as a love for the family and the ritual?
Yeah, because it'd be like, Saturday, 5 o'clock mass, you're done in 45 minutes.
Right, you go out to dinner. And then do whatever while I was in town. And we've been spoiled, actually, where my parents come, because my sister lives in New York City, I live here in LA. They usually come to us because it's a little bit more exotic than always going back to Indiana. And when they've come... I think also my parents are much older now. They'll come and they don't always. It's not like when we're in New York City or if we're in Los Angeles. We haven't actually gone to church, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. So they're kind of like being cool about getting with your style.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is maybe the way that you could interpret this is that you've been good. When you go home, you kind of do the thing that the family did at home. And when they come to you, they sort of do the thing the way you do it.
And there was one time my father, his friend happened to be working in the downtown LA church. So he was like, would you want to go with me? Because I'm going to go down and go with me as in drive me to downtown so I can say hi to my friend. And we went into the massive Catholic church in downtown LA. And they have these
new modern one?
Yeah, the modern one. And they have these gorgeous tapestries in there that cover the entire wall. And I was like, wow, this place is beautiful.
Right.
Outside the fact that I drive by it all the time, never even considered going in here. And you're like, oh, I sometimes forget,
Yeah, they're living museums.
Living museums, exactly.
Yeah. They obviously hold different connotations depending on your background,
absolutely.
or what the church meant to you. It's always interesting to me. I would say my upbringing is very similar to yours. Much of my family is still very faithful and devout. Some of them are not. And there's a real kind of a mostly positive experience with, the faith. But for me, something that wasn't able to kind of keep holding the thoughts I've had about religion enough to where I felt fully comfortable in that ritual. But, at different times in my life, I've turn to these thoughts, whether they were positive moments or personally darker moments or whatever.
Yeah.
How long have you been out in LA, by the way?
I've been here for now, like 4 years, a little over.
Oh, so it's relatively, you were in New York for how long?
I was in New York for like 7 or 8.
Okay. Did you have moments of difficulty where, in your kind of adult journey post-college, where there were moments of difficulty where maybe you considered what it means to like turn in the way that maybe you did as a child?
That's interesting.
Turn up and pray, or...
I mean, I have to say I have lived a good life in that way.
Yeah.
But also, New York is so tough that even if I think something had happened, my mind wouldn't have gone to faith for it. Do you know what I mean? My sister and I lived together for most of the time that I lived in the city.
Okay.
And we spent a lot of time together. Although this is sort of random, but we would always go to Easter Mass together. We would still try and do that and then go to brunch or whatever with friends. We'd try and do that together every year.
That's very cool. So clearly there was something.
Yeah. And we would always get the time wrong. Like we would always, we were the worst. Like we would Google, we'd always try and go to Old St. Pat's, which is in downtown New York, and it's gorgeous. And it's
right, I've actually been there.
Have you been there?
I
it's
visited.
Like in Soho.
Right.
And it's the namesake of the giant St. Patrick's Church in Midtown. And it's one of the oldest churches in the city. It's beautiful. And we'd always go and we'd always Google it, and we'd be like, okay, what time is Easter Mass? And we'd never actually look at the correct calendar, and we'd end up at the Spanish language one. One time it was in Chinese, or I shouldn't say Chinese, it was in Mandarin, completely had it wrong, but we'd still sit through it and be like, we just got to do it.
That's great, though. That's great.
Classic New York story.
So do you think that questions like, do you believe in an afterlife? And questions like have you had any particularly impressionable deaths in your life, like a grandparent or something, that was difficult and that made you engage with this thought for the first or a later time or something? Have you had some of these things start to come at you, or are you, in some ways, you've been fortunate, I'll knock on wood for you, that I have both of my parents. I'm fortunate in that way. You clearly have both of yours.
Yeah.
You haven't maybe not have had to face this too much. But have you had any of these moments where you've been struck by one of these things, or have you had yet to maybe be struck so deeply about some of these thoughts to where you have had to engage at this level? Okay, what does it mean that this person's gone? And do I believe, sometimes I talk to them because it feels good to talk to them, but I don't really believe that, Do you have have you had these conversations with yourself?
I definitely think that evolves over time as we get older. Like, I think, growing up, I think it was just sort of like the concept of something beyond was something in the way that I always have kind of believed in ghosts. And
oh, rad. Okay.
And
I don't know if you want to talk more about this, but go on.
I mean, I really do. I've
had another friend of mine come on and talk about this. She's a writer and a TV writer, and she was like, fuck you guys, I believe in ghosts. She has like one of these attitudes with her friends, like, don't give me any shit about it. I believe in ghosts, and I've heard some stories.
Yeah.
So go on, tell me a little bit more about what that means to you.
There's something that I feel like there is, I don't know, I think there is connections, and I think there is spirits, and I think energy does get left. I think I totally believe in all those sort of things.
Cool.
And so in many ways, like, I was very close with my grandfather, and when he died, I do feel like sometimes, like weird things will happen or whatever when, like when I was first moving, the first thing that I found was this box of stuff that I had of his, and I knew it was in a different box. I couldn't find it, but then it was in my carry-on, so it didn't get lost in the move. A box I got, like little things like that where I'm like, oh, I think he was looking out. He made sure that those things were with me. And I do, and I think it's just a nice thing to help you cope with pain when someone is lost, to think, no, they truly are in a better place.
Sure.
And that they're guiding us and that they're being helpful. And I do believe, like, just living a good life, I mean, I'm not like a ghost conspiracy, you know what I mean, or whatever.
No. I don't mean to put you into an uncomfortable place,
but I totally believe in energy and will defend that to the core, you know.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, great. But so you, that's cool. So you have a specific example is your grandfather.
Yeah.
Do you sense that in other places? Do you feel like in your daily life? Clearly something is happening with yoga for you as a very meditative and deep spiritual experience at times. As I get that. I do Pilates actually. It's not quite the same. It's a bit more aggro, just a tick more aggro than Pilates. I'm sorry, than yoga. So by the end, I'm kind of like, dear God, what have I just done? But I love it. And there's no doubt about it for me, a very meditative experience there. And, so do you find that there is, maybe you would say it's healing or something?
Yeah. I think there's definitely healing involved. I think, like the idea of live a good life, I don't think that there's someone keeping a check mark of everything that we do and that we're going to be judged with the weight of a feather down the road or whatever. Although The Good Place on NBC has made me think of larger, I guess, questions. I love that show, and I think it's brilliant that they've sort of made people really think about what could be in the afterlife.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But I do think, and I hope that there is more to life after this. I don't know if I believe in rebirth and all this sort of stuff, but I do think it's important to have energy pass through generations, and I don't know. I think that there is something deeper there.
I think that's really... Well, there's no doubt, right, that there's studies about traumatic past experiences can pass through generations in different ways. And sometimes I might be talking out of something here, but I feel like I've heard that there are studies of people that hold similar traumas but were separated from parents and things like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, studies where it's it's not only nurture.
Yeah.
Part nature here, part something about energy in the genes. So that's something maybe that you, as I hear you, is that right to think that you kind of, there's something about this that resonates for you?
Yeah, and I'm definitely an emotional person. I mean, it's funny because I'm totally like a crier. You know what I mean?
So, I am too, to some extent. My wife is an epic crier compared to me. So you're very open with your emotions, free with your emotions.
Yeah. And it's weird because we joke because it's like
you and your husband?
Yeah. And even friends, because they'll be like, what are you talking about? You're so tough. Or you're heartless, we'll joke about these things. And I'm like, no, I really feel emotions. I really feel energy, and I really get that from people, and I'll get really upset. And even it's not dumb by any means, but I've spent a lot of time in Savannah, Georgia, going to this film festival, and I always feel like there is a little bit of a weight on me when I'm in that city because there's just such a sad history to that city. And I do feel like when I walk around and I can't not harp on certain things where they pointed out to me, I was like, every sidewalk is just so incredible here. And they're like, well, it's because it's, this dates back to slave times. This was made in the slave trade. It's shale concrete. And then I can't walk on it anymore without thinking about it. And then I'm like, oh my God, it's been weighing on me all day. Just how we don't even think about the incredible work that went into this, and it's just gum all over it, and I can't let that go.
Right.
And, those sort of things really weigh me down. And yet then I'll, hear bad news or whatever, and I'm like, whatever, it's fine, I don't care. But other things really hit me hard emotionally.
So that's really interesting. So there's do they often take the form of a kind of social consciousness? Is that what you're saying?
I think a little bit.
It's a news, whether it's a social conscious thing or it's a news thing, you could find yourself actually really respond to something you hear.
Yeah, and
maybe
I
just
catch
the pain
myself
of others.
and I catch myself all the time because I live in West Hollywood, and there's a cat that we keep hearing at night, and I'm like, I can't find that cat, but I feel bad. It's probably hungry. It's cold out at night. I think he needs I'm like, should we put a box of something out there you can sleep in? My husband's like, there's literally a tent city down the street that you've not commented on once, and you're so worried about this cat. I'm like, you're right. They're human beings, so it is very LA jaded, I guess, in many ways too, but things will hit me hard.
That's a fun story to take to
take
piss
note
out of
and
yourself
remember.
or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But look, I feel that whenever I drive by, first of all, what you're saying is you can respond to any kind of emotional trigger, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you drive through Skid Row, and if you have any kind of sense of compassion, it's going to be difficult. You can have a different thought beyond the compassion, which is, well, that it's mostly their doing, or it's mostly not their doing, or it's mostly LA's problem, or it's mostly the nation's problem, or whatever.
We've been
hardened
to that in a way, yeah.
And you have to in a city like this. You have to steel yourself. You can't walk around that much of a raw nerve, or you're just not going to get through the day. But what you're saying is that there's some, and I'm only going to press on this because you mentioned like a friend who's like, "But you're so tough," or whatever.
Right.
There's some tension in you where it's like clearly, and look, you talk about. You're talking about pop culture a lot, and you're able to probably be very critical of certain artistic things, and that's your job, is to be thoughtful about artistic things, which don't have life and death attached to them.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is kind of like maybe you put on a kind of, again, you'll have to tell me, I'm just swinging at the fences here, but you can imbue a certain type of conversation with a more calloused energy of Julia.
Right.
But then there are certain types of conversations that maybe have more weight or reality to them, where you're like, no, actually, I'm very vulnerable here.
Yeah, totally.
And it surprises people that you're vulnerable to certain things.
Absolutely.
Because maybe a larger part of you is, you have the appearance of being callous about so many things.
And I can be super opinionated because of the way my work is. Like, I'm fine with throwing down what my ideas, you know what I mean? Because
you wouldn't be engaging if you weren't throwing down your opinions.
But then, I'll cry too.
Yeah.
Guys, I'll cry.
It's okay to cry. In fact, that we also know that there's that exhibits a great deal of strength of personality, as being able to cry and not hate yourself for it or feel embarrassed. But I think that's cool. I think, again, I hesitate to repeat myself, but it feels like I'm catching you at an interesting moment in your life where you're clearly aware of the things that these parts of yourself that they resonate with energy around you, and there's a sense of a connection to the larger story. You can put the kind of day-to-day funny opinions or not life or death opinions into a certain box. You're a comedian. So there are certain things that you have to keep yourself from maybe on a day-to-day basis. But what you're also exhibiting is like there's something larger that you really respond to that maybe surprises people around you when you bring it up.
I think so.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I know.
Sorry,
this
my
poor
God.
cough. Don't worry. We're going to edit out most of it, but not this one part where I talk about how you're really going. Well, look.
I'm like, thank you.
Good. It's good timing because we're at the end.
Yes. Oh.
So I'll let Julia get back to all the other talking she has to do today.
Oh my gosh, all the talking.
And wish you only the best with it. And the proper 7-Eleven on the way so that you can buy more cough drops.
Yes.
And I'll just thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It was really beautiful to share. And I really enjoy, one of the things I enjoy the most about these conversations is like walking through them. By a certain point, something kind of surprising pops up. It's almost like the person that's talking about it sort of forgot for a second that they think about energy in this particular way, or that friends don't see this part of them. So it's lovely to get to share that with you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And thank you all for listening.